should we do a little introduction as to who everyone is? Jonathan, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do as well.
Hello, Matt. Thanks for the invite today on behalf of Power Plate, and first time at Transition Zone, so thank you. Thanks for having us. Yeah, so I'm Jonathan Monks, EMEA Director for MyZone. I was one of the founding team members 11 years ago. Thank you, David. Wasn't expecting a clap at that point. Yeah, I guess, so we sort of, all of our background at the beginning of MyZone was from the fitness industry. We're passionate about getting people moving. We didn't just parachute into the space and think, right, wearable tech's going to be the next big thing. How do we get a chunk of it? We've sort of come from this space, and I guess we've learnt technology along the way. We're very much sort of from the human side of things. So we value the role and stuff that technology can play, but only in conjunction with humans, which is where all of us come in.
Hi everybody, I'm James Clack. I'm from Active IQ, so we're an awarding organisation. We basically produce qualification content, resources, materials, and we quality assure that process. So anybody who's a qualified PT or gym instructor, a large number of those will probably have an Active IQ qualification. So my role is I'm the head of digital learning. I've got extensive background in the fitness industry, 25 years plus. I know I don't look that old, but yeah, it's been a long time. Background previously in exercise referral specifically, but yeah, now I deal with a lot of content and educational resources and materials. Not just digital, that is my job title, but yeah, physical resources as well. So it's great to be here.
David Minton. We audit the fitness industry each year from the Leisure Database Company. And then we do supply-demand modelling and customer profiling. And I have a startup company that also develops apps for the Apple Watch. And thank you so much for hosting us again.
Pleasure.
It's great to be back.
Pleasure. Is it over to me now then?
Yeah.
Hi everyone, welcome. This is my home. This is Transition Zone. My relationship started with Power Plate 15 years ago in my home, but not this home, in my real house, with a single Power Plate. So my story has evolved with Power Plate, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that later on. So evolved with Power Plate, with move plates, with recovery kit, and now with the bike. So I've had the bike in the studio here now for a few months. So we've been testing and trialing it and feeding back. So any questions? I'll tell you everything, warts and all. Just let me know. Thanks.
Brilliant, thanks Claire. So thank you everybody for coming as well, because what gives us an opportunity to showcase the new product that we're going to be looking at today, but also how it can integrate, but also hear how best practice can be served from different views as well. My name's Matt Gleed. I'm a master trainer for Power Plate as well as other companies as well. And what I'm passionate about is how different companies do integrate together and can work alongside each other as well. So hopefully we can get some experience from this panel and direct you a little bit. So if we set the scene a little bit, over the last couple of years, it's been a difficult time in the industry. And obviously, over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of innovation. And with every part of innovation, there are heroes. And with almost the crisis comes champions as well. We've got a product which is going to be launching, which we're very excited to tell you about. But also, we want to give insight as to how the industry is going to go ahead as well. So the idea behind this panel really is to start to ask some questions and to create some discussion, which we can start to understand where some of our industry experts are thinking that the industry is going to go. Now, David, we're going to start with yourself here a little bit. Tell us from your audits that you've been doing and the insights that you have, because you deep dive into the industry so well. Tell us a little bit about what you think and what you're predicting is going to be the industry in 2023.
Okay. So we all know how difficult it's been over the last 2 years. And we all know as well how different parts of the industry is recovering at different rates. And that's really to do with the geography of where the sites are. And some of you, I know, are here from the public sector. So let's just talk about the public sector for a moment. So the public sector have in fact taken some of the legacy of COVID and said, everyone has really taken more interest in their health this year. So Bromley's a great example, where their health program has gone from 80 to 800. So across the public sector, we can start to see that people are taking their health more seriously. And of course, if you're doing that, you're also appealing to a wider audience. And that wider audience is taking in the older population. And I wrote about this for Power Plate a couple of years ago on active aging. And Power Plate are playing an important role in that. And so I'm very pleased to be here today to highlight that again. So that's the public sector. Private sector has varied enormously. And again, it's varied because of the geography of those sites. So the people that have really expanded post-COVID are the hotel groups. So any brand that's attached to a hotel. And why is that? It's the same reason that connected fitness started to fail as soon as the gyms reopened, because people missed the social aspect. And so the hotels are so ingrained in social aspects. The food and the drink and the general camaraderie is all encouraged far more in hotels. So hotels have recovered really well. And I think that the private sector, I admire what you're doing here, but some of the fitness brands that we know in London had a more difficult time. So Frame had a difficult time, and Digme had a difficult time, and Core Collective had a difficult time. But they've all bounced back. There are a smaller number of sites, but they're bouncing back. So a lot is to do with the geography, and I think a lot is to do with expanding the market, and a lot is to do with the programming that encourages more people across a wider age group to join in.
On the programming side, we've got, obviously in the audience here, we have got that private and public sector. You've touched on the programming, which has been a big buzzword for many years. Yeah. What are you seeing about programming? What is successful programming going to look like next year if it's changing?
I'm absolutely passionate about active aging, partly because of my age, but also during COVID, my mother died. And she didn't die of COVID, but she died of old age. She was 97. Now, most females in this country, they die at 84.6 years. So my mother had a great extension to her age. Now, the issue was that when she was in her mid-80s, she said to me, "I'm losing my balance, and I'm worried about that." So when I went to find help, I went down the traditional fitness route, and I went down the normal NHS route. And to my surprise, the NHS had got over 10 different departments that could help me. And through NHS, they came into my mother's home, and they were doing things like aging yoga. And all they were doing were teaching her how to fall so that she doesn't hurt herself. So very, very simple things. Also teaching her how to stand up properly, from the chair. Now, we've just looking around the room, we've probably all got parents that are coming up to an age that are going to have similar issues. Our industry, and I do have to give a plug to Sandwell Leisure, they were great, but their help was very, very limited compared to the help that I got from the NHS. Now, Fit Insider say that this is a $1 trillion business, and we're not taking advantage of that. And we need to involve ourselves in, and we need to rethink the programming for this wider age group. So, so I'm passionate about talking more about my experience and how the NHS could help us, because they were just had far more experience of working with that older age group compared to the fitness industry. Whereas our industry should really be at the forefront of helping all ages.
I think it's interesting because the topic of wellness, we know it's a trillion billion, it's a huge area, but how much of that can a local boutique studio like Claire's take? Because the bread and butter is going to be probably, I don't know, Claire, what's the average member here? What avatar would, yeah.
Yeah, our demographic are certainly not young. They're between 40 and 55. And that is what really has enabled us to stay open and survive the pandemic, I think.
And that's an interesting one because they have got, as David said, the parents which are, it's almost, I look at a 40, 50-year-old thinking, you've probably got parents that are of poor health, so you don't want to become your parents, but you've also probably have got younger children, which we almost want to be a role model for. So it is an affluent market. How do you capture it?
Yeah, but they've got different goals. Of course, everybody's about aesthetics and how they look, but I think that is not their number one priority when they come in to work out. It's I want to move well, I want to stay better for longer, I want to achieve some of the challenges and goals that I've got as I get older. So I've got 2 clients at the moment. One of them wanted to go and climb, get to base camp at Mount Everest, and he's 60. So I think as well as you get older, that you've got more financial security and you want to then go on and start doing the different challenges. But I have seen an increase in a slightly older demographic even coming in post-pandemic, because they now realise, as you said, David, how important it is to look after themselves.
And David, is the data saying that the newer members, are they coming from that age demographic as well?
Without doubt. And you only have to remember that around 40% of the total population are over 50. And most of them are, like myself, baby boomers. And baby boomers, just like Mick Jagger, they don't want to grow old. They want to keep dancing, they want to keep climbing, they want to keep riding. And so the whole thing of healthy movement, I think, is the new buzzwords. Because it's personal fitness is obviously important, but it's how you get there. And so without doubt, people are moving to the older market. So I've mentioned the public sector and how successful they are. And I mentioned hotels. And I mentioned hotels because of the social aspect. But as you've just said, the older they are, the more loyal they are. Yeah, and so, Dr. Paul Bedford talks about attrition. Well, for every, and I call it the axis of evil. So every 18 to 30-year-old that leaves your club, then replace that person with a 50-plus person. And that 50-plus person will stay 4 times longer and be far more loyal and will come more often. Because remember, the 18 to 30-year-olds have got so many distractions, they like to think they're coming for 2 or 3 times a week, but they don't. The figures show. Dr. Paul tells us time and time again, if they come 1.2 times a week, that's a good average, yeah. Now, so replace the younger people with an older person.
And James, education now for aging, for working with seniors, how do you word it in the courses you do?
So we have a qualification in the guise of older adults. So that's the terminology that's part of the qualifications. I'll be completely honest, it's not one of our most popular products. It's crazy. And whether that is because it's an additional separate qualification or bolt-on that people would elect to do, I think there definitely should be almost a review of that and look at, okay, what could we take from that and put into the main entry to industry qualifications like level 2 gym, level 3 PT. It is covered to some extent in those qualifications, but if you really want to specialise in that population group, you would need to go and do a separate qualification. I have mixed views on that. You know, movement, ultimately we want people to move throughout their lives and be active, and whether it's a qualified PT that's doing that, or whether they go and buy a piece of gym equipment from their local supermarket, or they come to a health club and engage with staff or facilities, it's how do we join up all of those dots and make that work, essentially, to make sure that we have a healthy, well, aging population. So, yeah, there's definitely things I think that we need to do in terms of the qualification space. The problem that we have generally is that standards are written. So if in the world of education, formal regulated qualifications, a standard is written by the professional association, so in this case, SIMSPA, and those standards are then passed to a company like us, and we interpret those standards along with our competitors, and we come up with a qualification. But those are already probably 5 years, 6 years old now. We've had a pandemic since then. They'll be up for review again shortly, I believe, but we don't have the ability to tweak qualifications per se at the rate at which the industry moves and technology moves and the world is moving. And that's where CPD comes in, I guess, and people being curious about what type of CPD they want to engage in and what avenues they want to specialise in. So, yeah, it's challenging in the world of education to meet the needs of all customers just because it takes so long to change the syllabus because the standards are set some way before. I'd also argue that I did my fitness qualifications 25 years ago, and I always think if I videoed that, I don't even know what video cameras were around then, but if I videoed that and submitted that video today, I think I'd probably pass still. So what's changed, what's moved on in terms of, you know, all of the crucial things that we need to engage clients and customers and help them change their behaviours or modify their behaviours and make transformations and changes. Where have we come in 25 years? Technology is moving on so fast. We need to leverage that more in education, I think, and work probably more with kit suppliers and manufacturers and get them involved in the development of qualifications. So things aren't trends, but or fads. Sorry, they should be almost, we should follow a trend, but eliminate fads. So yeah.
David, I'm going to come back with another question for you. So talk to me a little bit about boutique fitness and how they are going to survive this, because we're talking about big education partners, we're talking about operators, and you're talking about leisure centres, but you know, let's dive down to the little standalone studios. What makes them different, and how are they really coming out of this pandemic and looking for a stronger next year?
Well, I've just come from recording the foreword to Emma Barry's Badass Boutique book because she's doing an audio version of that book. So I had to go and do the foreword this morning. Personally, I love boutiques because I think creativity comes from boutiques. And that creativity then flows through into the rest of the industry. Now, we've obviously seen lots of the creativity come from LA and New York, and some of it has been homegrown as well from here. But I think the boutiques have a combination of things. So you need to have an experience because you're charging more for the boutiques. So that experience has to be really good, and it has to be really good every time you go. Now, we've all been to places where a personal trainer has been told to take a class, and it hasn't been as good as what it would have been if we'd had the real person taking that class. Whereas the boutiques don't have that option. You know, they have to have the best people all the time to provide that experience. And it depends what type of boutique it is. So if it's a boutique with a single concept, then that's, in theory, I think, going to dissolve more into offering more. So we know that some of the boutique brands have been merging different concepts so that they can offer more in the same space. And then we have boutiques like this one. These are very special because anyone that's got any sort of injury, anyone that is not quite sure what they really want to do and why they want to do it, or anyone that is actually trying to achieve something very special, you come to a special place and you get special attention. So, I think there isn't, I mean, we talk about boutiques, but there's such a range of boutiques. And I love trying them all out. Back in beginning of 2019, we published a report on the boutique industry. And one of the things that my team said was, if we're doing a boutique report, then we have to go and try everything. So besides having the fittest team that you can imagine, we did actually go and try all the different boutiques that were available back in 2019. And that gave us an absolute eye-opener to the boutique industry. And that's why I say it is so diverse. So to try to sum it up is difficult. But I think that it will continue to develop because the creativity is there.
And Jonathan, you're from MyZone's perspective, you are in the boutiques, very heavily involved. You're in almost the biggest operators involved there. You've got partnerships with both. How do you balance that, and how is technology supporting not only your partnerships, but the clubs operate as well?
Yeah, great question. I think the key is from, I guess, the lens that we look at it is, our mission is to make people feel good about exercise and create powerful, positive experiences. And those powerful experiences are relevant to whatever spectrum you're looking at. So if you're looking at the boutique side of things, it's going, right, how do we give a 10 out of 10 service? This person comes in and we get to know them, we have interactions with them, and it's very, high touch experience. And the lighting, the music, everything that goes with it, the post-workout feedback, technologies just enhances all of that. And you pay a premium, and the technology feedback that you get into that is leveraged better by the staff than it would be in a low-touch environment that has a lower staff model. But the principles are still the same. I guess on one end of the side of things, you're expecting the technology to do more of the work for you because that's what the model supports. On the boutique side of things, you've got more humans involved to accentuate that experience and make it more powerful.
Okay, so Claire, your users, are they coming here because of your partnerships and using technology, or are they, because do you find now that there is a need for people to, because they're so technology adapt on their phones, they come in and they still want to use them, or do you find that people are now wanting to come away from their phone but still see the technology around them?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I think people are really keen to track and measure and have something to look at. So they want to know how many steps they've done, what their heart rate has been. I mean, obviously we've got MyZone here and we do integrate it into classes. So they're keen to see, when they're in the red zone. So they are driven by technology. Do they want to see it here? Do they want to switch off when they come in? I think it varies, really.
I mean, it'll depend on the person.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, for me personally, I love watching my heart rate, so I know exactly what energy system I'm in, how long I can last in my workout, how hard I should be working. But I'm also the same user who will wear heart rate technology when I'm doing yoga to make sure I'm not holding my breath, because if I'm going in a blue zone, I shouldn't be. So I use it to an extreme, probably.
I think everybody is so used to now having everything measurable and accountable in that. So I think it's an important part, and it certainly will be even more important in the future, for sure.
So Jonathan, are you finding more companies are coming on board now, specifically looking at, do I want to be working harder? Or are we now getting the health benefits of not only am I using it in the clubs, but there is also, I'm using it outside, I now want that crossover. Is that truly happened?
So I guess when we started out, one of the core missions of the business was to help health clubs and operators delivering fitness experiences connect with members inside the facility and outside of the facility. And even going into sort of 2019 pre-pandemic, there was a lot of operators, when we talked to them about the power of MyZone, they were just fixated on how to get the most of the products within a group training environment, which is great. And there's loads of great bells and whistles that you can do with that. And we're always saying to them, that's fantastic, but how are you leveraging the platform to stay connected to your members wherever they're training? And they were like, we're not interested in our members outside of the four walls. Clearly no one would have wished COVID to have happened, but unfortunately a lot of those, including existing customers of ours that were paying license fees, were suddenly like, pandemic hits, the doors close, and they're like, right, tell me about all this stuff you can do with the platform to connect with members outside of the business. So that's been significant. Remind me of the question again, I've gone off piece slightly.
Yeah, so no, I mean, you're coming round to it, but I guess really the need of people to track in, but also to track outside of the gym as well.
We sort of had this thing, and I guess, again, you kind of look inward at these things, and a lot of people are using MyZone to track high intensity. And there's a danger of a culture evolving where it's just about smashing yourself and actually then all you do is you get people injured and they fall off the cliff and they don't exercise and they quit their memberships, which is no good for anyone. So actually, we're working harder to evolve our gamification, and there's stuff in the pipeline that will actually drive people to train smarter. Whoop is a brand that's done a phenomenal job of gamifying heart rate recovery and making rest and recovery something that's palatable and easy to understand for the mass market. I guess we made intensity tracking something and heart rate tracking something that's simple and meaningful for the mass market in a way that wasn't done previously. I think previously people would go, I'm at 146 beats per minute, but not really know the context of that. So using simple colors and numbers and a point system sort of helped to do that. But we are seeing a trend, and we're certainly trying to drive this trend of trainers and operators to use MyZone as a tool to get people to train safely and identify people that are perhaps overtraining, to actually encourage them to do recovery, which certainly in terms of a partnership with a brand like Power Plate sort of plays into it, because actually, again, hopefully a lot of you are familiar with the colors of MyZone, but just what this point, so gray and blue is the sort of lower intensities. Actually, it's a good thing to have a few sessions a week that are in your gray and blue zone, and actually consider recovery in that regard.
Well, that talks to Power Plate really well, because that is movement quality, and if you want to put some high intensity into it, then that's almost a different workout. But I mean, here at the Transition Zone, do you have the classes which are not all about high intensity?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have. I've just opened another site, so over there it's much more holistic. So we've removed the movement and mobility, so the slower classes from here, and now they're there, and it's everything now from breath work, which again is really important for recovery, and if you want to perform better for high performance stuff. So we do breath work, we do they're called slow-mo classes, so they're movement and mobility, and we also do sort of like guided meditations. So
that's really specialist work though, isn't it? So
it's new.
Yeah.
It's new because I think post-pandemic, I really thought about this 360-degree wellness. So you come in here and everybody was getting fit and working hard and getting strong, but there was still something missing, and they weren't meeting their goals. There were still challenges, and it's not necessarily a physical challenge. It could be a mental challenge why they are not meeting their goals. So that's when I opened Resilience Zone. So that's all about building resilience from a more mental fitness perspective. So I try not to talk about mental health. I talk much more about mental wellness and holistic. So we deal with the physical side here in terms of your body, and then we deal with the more mental fitness over at the other side. So it's that same concept, squats for the soul, bicep curls for the brain. It's making it much more accessible so people don't think, I don't want to talk about my mental health. It's about how can you be well 360 degrees, not just on the outside, but on the inside and up here as well.
Well, it's interesting you talk about the inside, because one of the things that we are all becoming more and more aware of. And actually, I was talking to Aaron earlier in the audience from Feel Good Fitness, and we're talking about the anti-aging benefits. It's something which I've been hearing about in the industry, and even from a Power Plate perspective, 10 years ago, people have talked about this, but yet we're all nodding our heads. We all know the benefit of cell and health and wellness, but yet it hasn't really come deep into the fitness industry. And James, the challenge is we don't have the members of staff knowing deep enough, because we are looking at new members of staff so quickly. So fix this for us.
We looked at what have we learned from the pandemic, what are trends. Obviously, we follow that. But wellness as a holistic approach is something which we definitely, whether that's corporate wellness, or wellness for a PT in a one-to-one or one small group. So we are working on some products around that. The first one of those is around sleep and recovery. And it goes back to some stuff you were saying, Jonathan, around traditionally qualifications in our sector have looked at, this is how you train someone to hit a certain target in a certain amount of time. And they would go out into the workplace, book a few sessions with clients. Those clients would turn up. It would be structured program, but nobody was, that I'm aware of, when I see it in gyms that I've worked in previously, gyms I go to now, very few PTs will look at how is that client recovering from the previous session. Are they ready to do that session we had planned today? And I think sometimes there's a reluctance to deviate from the plan. So sleep and recovery and listening to your body and knowing it's okay to actually not do the session that was planned today is not spoken about enough in the education realms, I don't think.
But am I going to challenge you on this one by saying that when you are getting a corporate office worker who wants to redirect their career, when they come into learning and they're coming into an operator, they're coming at it in a very different stance than a 20-year-old who's left college or 21-year-old leaving university, has always enjoyed working out. So we're getting almost two very different types of fitness professionals here.
Yeah, it's about something which I've been looking at a lot lately is personas. Again, the industry, I used to teach fitness qualifications, and I'd have a 16-year-old maybe in a group, and I'd have a 73-year-old who is also in the same group, or two different classes I might teach, and everything in between. And we've never really looked at what are the needs of those specific learners. A 65-year-old might not want to learn or doesn't learn in the same way that a 16, 18, 21-year-old learns. And it's the same with assessment. Some assessments are fit for purpose for an older age group or category, or might be more geared towards a younger age category. So I think as a sector, we've definitely got work to do around personas and mapping of those personas around learners, as well as clients. But yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, and there is a huge churn, and that's a big part of the problem, is that we're getting people who are eager and fresh-faced into the industry. They don't necessarily know what it's really like. It is tough.
But they're lacking the communication skills. I mean, let's just call it what it is. These people are coming to us to tick boxes to get qualifications, but they don't know how to interact. Using something like MyZone, they can coach by a colour. If they're going to be working with somebody who has been in the industry for great experience, but you can coach your staff into how to interact. You can coach people, but that is a coaching environment that you're coming into. So is there anything coming out, or how can we get people to learn the communication skills? Because I personally go around so many operators wearing different hats for different companies, but I'm always seeing young members of staff that just want to do the HIIT training because that's how they train, and they don't want to learn how to use cardiovascular machines because that's not what they do. But at the end of the day, that is where health and wellness really comes in, but they're missing the trick. Can we patch it?
I think it's hard, and there's so many factors that influence that. I was talking to Keith Smith, who many of you may know. We were having this conversation about compliance versus competence the other day. And as an industry, we tend to sway more towards compliance. You have to have this qualification to do this job. And that doesn't necessarily always equate to competence. Yes, there is a set standard, and people need to meet that in order to be successful and pass and work in the sector. But how do you develop that competence? And typically that is through CPD, but you have to have an element of curiosity and creativity to want to go out and seek new knowledge, new information. And sometimes the way that people are expected to do that is typically through structured regimental training, when actually, every day something like a billion educational videos are watched just on YouTube. 1 million educational videos are uploaded. Granted, they're not all to do with exercise and wellness, but there is a significant number there, and people can go and seek information out pretty much from whatever source they want nowadays. And we need to be more accepting of that and teach people as well. I think we're missing a trick around teaching the fundamentals around research and evaluation skills, enabling, giving them the tools to go out and find, okay, how do I know whether this is something which I should really look into more, or actually,
Looking at how credible it is and how they can use it.
Yeah, 100%. And it's the same as, you do a degree, by the time you finish, most of the information apparently is out of date, they say nowadays. And you're not doing a degree necessarily to get a qualification in that subject. You're developing skills, and you're showing someone that you can turn up every day, unless you've been to the student union bar the night before, maybe a bit hungover, but you're showing that commitment. You've turned up, you've met a standard, you've developed skills in evaluation, research, writing, communication. And that's what really I think employers are looking for, rather than a degree subject per se. So I think we need to maybe look at that in a bit more detail and a bit more scrutiny as education, or from the educational perspective from our sector, and see what we can do to develop those skills along with the softer communication skills as well. It can be hard to teach them when people don't have them and just don't really have a desire to learn them. I've been there, I've taught many learners who are...
Well, they're coming into it because they're interested in fitness, but...
Yeah, or they think they're going to earn a lot of money. Let's be honest, the amount of learners I always ask them on the first day of the course, what are your expectations, what do you want to achieve? I want to train celebrities, I want to earn 100 grand a year. It's like...
No one's ever retired being a personal trainer yet, have they?
And you sit down and you work through them. Ben Coomer does a really good bit in his one of his books around, he actually breaks it down to earn six-figure salary. What do you have to do to be successful? And it's a lot of work. It's a real challenge. And I think that maybe we need to look at what we're selling to learners. It is very sexy, and Instagram has really done a lot for it in terms of promoting our sector. But it is hard graft. I know I've been there, as many of us do, and yeah, it's a tough gig. So,
can I pick up on the mental wellness that you were talking about? So again, cast our minds back to when the pandemic was happening. The government suggested that we went out for an hour each day. And since then, we've had so many people linking our connection with nature and doing things in the open. Now, lots of people say to me, we're not back at the same level that we were pre-COVID. And let me give you an example of why that may be. So for some of the people that have picked up on the whole thing of spending time outdoors, so I started exercising in Hyde Park with a company called Be Fearsome. And so I go to their mobility class on a Tuesday morning. So one of the reasons I go is because I can take my dog. And so, and about a third of the people that go to that class take their dogs. So it's a mobility class in the park. It's social because we take our dogs. And I'm still going to that class. And so I think that there are lots of people that found somewhere to exercise outdoors, and they probably are still doing that as part of the weekly exercise regime.
That's interesting. And Jonathan, with MyZone, the goal is to get people to exercise in and outside as well. So have you seen an increase of people tracking the outdoor activities and inside the gym? Is there any data on that? Or?
One of the key metrics of the business. So pre-pandemic, in terms of MyZone uploads, we looked about 60% of uploads globally were in facilities. naturally that went down to near to zero during lockdown, and it's now settled sort of, well, however long we are post sort of lockdown periods, about 60% outside, so flipped the other way around. So only 40% inside, which kind of matches the trends we're seeing in the industry.
But outside could be sorry, David, outside could be at home, so they're working from home.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, yeah,
So I think
for clarity.
that's
At least
the big
away from the
change
facility. Yeah.
that people are continuing to work out at home.
Are your members doing that?
We didn't have that many that decided to do that. There have been some, so they have got that hybrid model. And I think, you know, a lot of studios now are still continually updating their on-demand content. They're still doing some live streams. I mean, we did do that for a while, and we have done some more on-demand and more tutorials. So tutorials based on, we know you've got your own equipment. If you're going to use them, this is how you do it properly. So they're much more educational. They're 3 or 4 minutes, you know, how to do a proper squat, and starting from body weight through to weighted, through to barbell. So they're much more educational. But for example, for Christmas now, when we know there'll be people that will be away, we're going to put a few live stream classes on, which we haven't done for a while. But I think offering that hybrid model is really important still. As much as I don't do an awful lot of it, I think that I should.
David, have you got data on that?
Well, picking up on what Jonathan's just said, so during COVID, we saw that outdoor classes grew by over 400%. And post-COVID, they are still over 200%. And of course, that totally relies on public sector having far more open space. But we've also got, let's say, boutiques like BXR. They're using the local park next door. So, you know, people are still doing outdoor classes.
Okay, interesting. So Claire, how have you worked with your staff to help them be more educated, to kind of, because I mean, you've got a very successful business here. What have you consciously done, or can you reflect on it that subconsciously, just within the environment, that they've learned certain communication skills? Have they done additional qualifications, or are they just good staff that are prepared to put their...
It's going to sound really ageist. I have been in this site for 9 years, and I have learned lessons, good and bad. And for me, I now will not recruit anybody that's got a 2. I just won't recruit any 20-year-olds.
So they've got to have a bit of life experience?
They've got to have life experience. They've got to understand that this is a proper job, and they've got to have responsibilities. And everybody that works at Transition Zone, and most of them have been with me for a minimum of 5 years. They don't go, and they're all self-employed. It's a proper job. They're all highly educated, and they love what they do, and they're continually educating themselves. So we have a head of training and development, and we do every couple of months internal training. So there might be a topic sent out, do we want to cover this, or we devise one ourselves, and everybody comes. So it's not about, it's about collaboration, it's about sharing, and I think that then has a knock-on effect with clients. For me, what's really important in terms of client retention is being able to communicate with clients, because clients come in here and yeah, they want to do a workout, but sometimes they come in here for a chat. We are life coaches, we are talking therapists, and we are trainers.
But that's the difference between the fitness to the wellness industry as well.
Yeah.
If I do believe that if you're a boutique and you're just there for the fitness and it's a 45-minute workout and you're out the door, you're always going to be looking for that next participant, where what you're talking about is a member, somebody who turns up year upon year, still evolving their own fitness goals because they've got members of the staff that are now passionate about them, and you've got champions. It's a mutual championing of each other, isn't it?
I mean, one thing that we haven't really talked about yet is the advent, in terms of the boutique industry, is ClassPass coming on board. You know, and that has changed the market considerably in terms of client loyalty, demographic, for class-based sessions. You know, ClassPass has come in and they've offered, on the consumer side, a fantastic product. But in terms of, for us as boutique owners, it's not worked well for us because the crossover is low, and I think what has changed now, certainly with ClassPass, is it used to be for the younger demographic, whereas now even the slightly older are using ClassPass because it's variety, they can flit about, they can do lots of different things. So it's a massive consideration for the boutique industry.
So are you still using it?
I use ClassPass.
Is it now sort of marketing with integrity almost? Or?
I do use ClassPass purely because I couldn't afford not to at the beginning, you know, but at the beginning, whenever ClassPass first came to the market, all of my classes were heavily, and my revenue was heavily ClassPass, whereas now it's flipped the other way, and I can really dictate how many slots I offer, if I want people to come, if I don't. So for the other site, I'm not offering that on ClassPass.
Is it harder to engage and gain better, meaningful interactions with people who are looking just to come and effectively give you a trial?
There's no relationship there, because you know as soon as they walk through the door that they won't come back again. I just know. But I mean,
is that because you're heavily a concept gym here in terms of, or a facility that is, because you're fantastic at using things like TRX, Power Plate, MyZone, and strength training, but they are very distinguished concepts where almost there's different identities, or people come for different classes for different reasons, or they come for balance. So would that be the struggle there, or?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think we've never been a studio, as much as it doesn't look like a slightly older environment, far from it actually, I don't think. We're just not about that whipping and influencers and bloggers. We're just not that type of studio.
It's very different than like a Peloton kind of feel to a workout.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But as I've said before, it's enabled us to stay consistent, to stay open, and to keep going and keep evolving, because our slightly older demographic are not just about aesthetics.
So what has been the formula of success then? How have you got because we've talked about how sometimes it's a struggle to engage people, but what is the secret of success?
It's always a struggle, you know. I think it's knowing your clients, and as trite as it sounds, it is a community here. Everybody knows each other. They know us, we know them. They get to know the trainers. The team have been here minimum 4 or 5 years. It's about not just offering quick fixes, it's about offering solutions. So we question, we're curious, we ask for feedback, good and not so good. So we are constantly trying to evolve and adapt. I've said it's the team. The team are really important in, you know, keeping the business going and sustained. And it's about offering variety. And we were talking about, you know, fads, and we're definitely not about fads. And I think that's one thing that we've always been about. If we're going to do something, we do it really well, and we specialize in what we do, and we stick to that, and we do it well. So it's not about just thinking, oh, you know, at the moment it's all about HIIT training, and then it was all about strength training, and now it's all about being wholesome and holistic. We know what we do it well, and we don't follow. Yeah, and we don't follow any fads.
Okay.
You know, that for me has, and it's hard work. You know, it's evolving. It's not about always offering the same thing. It's about continually evolving, but staying true to what your core business is.
So we're going to start coming to an opportunity to ask some questions. So has anybody got any questions about anything we've talked about so far? Because if not, I'd like to direct us to just one last topic. Has anyone got any questions at the moment? So I'm going to, oh, you do? Steve?
Options within the NHS. I guess sort of bringing the conversation back to the active ageing and the falls prevention, etc. Do you feel that, how can the fitness industry access that in terms of they are the perceived specialists? I guess maybe there's confidence that it's within the NHS, so that's maybe a different feel from from your mum, you said, and I'd say with my mum, a similar age. Is there anything that we can learn from the NHS, or is there something, do you think, that can be enhanced to bridge that gap between those two sectors?
I think there's so much that we can learn, but there's also, I think, so much synergy And I think so much of it is, so let me just give you a few examples. So my mother used to fall a lot, but she never broke anything. But every time that she did fall and that they persuaded her to go into a hospital for a checkup, then when she came out of hospital, then she went to step down. And at step down, they have a gym. And so she's in there. She's in the gym every day. And I think to myself, the fitness industry should actually be providing this facility at every step down site in the country, because that's what we do. But the NHS are doing that. And so lots of the equipment that is here she went to 3 step downs. They'd all got really good equipment. And so that was the first thing that I really noticed and picked up on. The other thing that was, I came across 5 different departments that were involved in keeping my mother active at home. Now, and then it suddenly dawned on me, they're doing it because there is an economic argument for them. It is far cheaper to keep my mother active at home than for her to be in hospital. So the NHS are really driven from the economic point of view to get people out and keep them independent. And if we can play a part in that, that would be brilliant.
Can I just add to that? Sorry. I used to work in the NHS running an exercise referral scheme, particularly or specifically in mental health. And mental health services that I've experienced are amazing at offering those services. And I think other areas of the NHS could learn a lot from them in terms of how to set up a scheme, how to run it effectively and efficiently, and how to just make it happen. Yet other areas of the NHS, they'll just outsource that to other third parties who maybe don't have the skill set or experience in managing quite tricky clients for one reason or another. So I think, there's definitely huge, really, really successful schemes within the NHS that we're just not tapping into enough as a society. And there is this divide. The medical profession isn't totally on board with the fitness industry, and the fitness industry does its own thing, yet we operate in the same space. We just need to join up more.
That was exactly going to be my point, James, is that the NHS, and I'd like to get your thoughts on that, David, actually don't believe the fitness industry is credible. Because of education, because of the way that we're training people, and it's not with a long-term goal, it's actually very sort of short-term. So we maybe need to sort of go to them rather than expecting them to come to us. So I'd be intrigued to know how we bridge that gap a little bit more effectively.
James.
No.
I'll speak to that one because I'm quite passionate about this. I think we just, as an industry, we drink our own Kool-Aid a little bit. We're all in it. It's, we get sucked into Instagram. I'm as guilty as anyone. And actually, we really struggle to see the wood from the trees and to take the view of the lens of people that aren't in the space. And I think there's just so much ego in this industry, isn't it? One of the things we're trying to promote through MyZone is effort over ego, to sort of play on what we do in democratizing fitness and bringing people together and making things fun. But the barriers, the perceived barriers to entry by practitioners that could be signposting people towards exercise, I think are put off by that.
Well, I think we're coming into the new year, which is going to be the classic of people saying, I just want to get a little bit fitter before I join a gym. I want to get a little bit fitter before I have personal training. And I mean, these are classic lines that we've been hearing for ever. But yet we're talking about there's a growing senior population. We're talking about cellular health more. We're talking about bone density. We're talking about all of these benefits. It's coming closer, I feel. Like the industry is starting to move in a more of a commercial way to adapt. I still feel like next year is not going to be the year that we're suddenly going to see health over fitness, but wellness it's around the corner, isn't it? It's coming through.
Can I also tell you my experience with the government over COVID? So someone from the Cabinet Office rang me and said, we want to support the industry, but we've just got a few questions that we don't know the answers to. So could you tell us? So the first question they wanted to know the answer to was, how often do people go? Well, collectively, we don't really know, because no one shares that information. And as I've already alluded to, people don't want to share that information because the numbers are not that good. Dr. Paul keeps telling us, but it's just true, unless we're looking at somewhere special like you, where there is a real community and family, and everyone knows their name. It's Cheers. The second question that they asked was, of the 10.4 million direct debit members that are mentioned in our annual report, could the industry prove that they are fitter and healthier than the rest of the population? Well, absolutely, absolutely. There is no way, because we just don't have that information. And then it's public information that Connected Fitness during COVID were publishing how many times people exercised per month. They came out with all these averages. So Strava came out with things, Peloton came out with figures, and all those figures were just in the public domain. So they said, well, why don't we know more about the industry? And the reason is because there's no common knowledge about how often people go and what they do when they're there, and how, as being a member, has improved their health. And until we solve some of those questions, then we're not going to be able to answer those questions to the government. And the government said to me, well, we'd like to support the industry, but the industry is not helping us to answer those questions. So therefore, whilst we're actually in a pandemic, it's irrelevant, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we all probably said that the government didn't do enough to support our industry, but we've not given them enough reason at a strategic level, probably why. Yeah. Jonathan, something recently going on in the government with?
Yes, yeah. So we're running a campaign to get MPs moving, which, believe it or not, is bloody hard work, actually, because they don't exercise, and apparently there's been a little bit going on at Westminster at the moment, so that's not helping. But yeah, just we ran a congressional challenge with Congress in the US over the last couple of years, and it's been quite effective getting different parties moving, and we've tried to replicate that with Westminster, and it's been pretty hard. And I think the reality is it's actually, maybe there's a small element of fear of technology and embracing technology, but the overriding issue is they don't exercise. And I'm obviously saying that with a broad brush, and that probably speaks to another challenge that we have in terms of, if we're talking sort of public policy, of how we get exercise at the forefront of what we do, is the people leading change need to lead by example.
Okay. Any other questions come from the audience? No? All feeling comfortable about this then? Yeah, okay. Any last thoughts on any parts that we've done on today? So, Jonathan?
Yeah, just one theme that we haven't sort of picked up on, but we kind of loosely have through some of the conversations is habit formation and gamification and making stuff fun. And it maybe links to some of the previous points. It all links back to community, and it's like maybe as an industry sometimes we've got to perhaps take ourselves less seriously, and by that as we can be professional, we can understand movement standards, but ultimately it's about creating positive experiences that makes it fun. And technology can be an enhancer of that. I'm not saying it's the be all and end all, but it is something that can add to it. But it's kind of EQ over IQ as well, and it's just understanding people, and that's how we win, I believe, in this game.
Okay, and over to Active IQ.
Yeah, I mean, technology, my job is digital learning. It's, and I love technology, and I hate it sometimes as well. But, you know, if there's a McKinsey report which said in the first 8 weeks of the pandemic, the adoption of technology advanced 5 years. That's phenomenal. And we're out of the pandemic now. And people seem to be dropping, or I get told a lot, oh, that's not the way forward now, technology's not the way forward. But we've all got watches that beep, and we all keep our phones on us. That's just in time, you know, learning, training that you've got in your pocket. If you want to know something, you just Google it or YouTube it. So I think there's lots of issues around technology from an educational perspective, but we almost need to make sure that people have the ability to learn via technology and they understand how to use it to their benefit rather than just being told to use it or expected to use it. I think we overlook that a lot of the time in terms of, oh, you've got a phone or you've got a tablet or you've got a computer, go and learn. But you know, there's, yeah, and digital literacy is a huge, huge problem in this country. And we need to address that. So yeah, technology is here to stay. It's not the only way to learn, but it has a huge part in the learning process now from, you know, school-aged children right up to older adults. So yeah, we need to find ways to maximise and leverage its potential. And that's what I want to do.
And I would say that the more data we collect, the more questions it raises. So we need to collect more data more often because the government look at our industry and say, at any one time, 85% of the population are not using you. And we can't prove anything other than that. So more data more often.
And Claire, what's your plans for next year? More studios, or is this going to be more diverse team? Or?
No, mine is about trying to educate, and we have talked about this, a bit more about balance and recovery. In fact, we've got one of our events is all about sleep. So it's trying to educate people that it's not always about the big hard push. And in fact, if you recover better, you actually will perform better with the big hard push. So trying to educate a bit more in that, I think is, it's balance. It's definitely balance. Yeah, I think.
Lovely, brilliant. Can we please give a hand to our panel?